$5 million. That was the price tag my fiance put on my life. I thought we were going to a romantic dinner. I thought the pearl necklace he gave me was a promise of forever. Instead, it was a leash. I found myself on my knees in a smoke-filled VIP room, listening to the man I loved bet my body on a losing hand of poker. The air smelled of stale whiskey and terrifying desperation. I wanted to scream, but fear had stolen my voice. And then he stood up. The man in the shadows, the monster with eyes like the abyss. He didn't look at the money. He looked at me like I was a rare instrument he couldn't wait to play. Welcome to fate's gentle hands, where love isn't a fairy tale, it's a transaction. And my debt? It was just beginning. The air inside the private room was thick enough to choke on. It smelled of stale tobacco, expensive cologne, and the metallic tang of fear. My lungs burned with every shallow breath I took. Move. A rough hand shoved me from behind. I stumbled, my high heels catching on the plush carpet, and I went down hard. My knees slammed into the red velvet floor, sending a jolt of sharp pain shooting up my legs. The sequins on my red dress scraped against my skin like sandpaper. I gasped, pushing my hair out of my face, and looked up. The room was dim, lit only by a low-hanging crystal chandelier that cast long, distorted shadows against the walls. But the darkness was not empty. Around a round green poker table sat 5 men. They were not the kind of men you saw at the grocery store or the park. They were predators. Their eyes, heavy with lust and cruelty, locked onto me instantly. I scrambled backward, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I reached out blindly, my fingers closing around the fabric of a familiar pair of trousers. Mark. My fiancé was standing above me, but he looked nothing like the man I had agreed to marry. His blonde hair was disheveled, sticking to his forehead with sweat. His usually pristine white shirt was soaked through, translucent against his skin. His hands were shaking so violently that he looked like he was having a seizure. "Mark, what is going on?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "You said we were going to dinner. You said—" He did not look at me. His eyes were fixed on the pile of colorful chips in the center of the table. He looked manic, desperate, like a man drowning who would push anyone under just to get a breath of air. "I am out of cash!" Mark screamed, his voice cracking. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "But I have her. Look at her. She is a classical violinist. She is pure. She is flawless." My blood ran cold. The room started to spin. "She is worth $5 million, Mark yelled, sweat dripping from his chin. "I am betting her on the final hand." Silence, absolute terrifying silence. I stared at him, my brain refusing to process the words. $5 million. That was the price tag he had just put on my life, on 3 years of love, on every promise he had ever made. "Mark, please," I choked out, tugging at his pant leg. "Let us go home. You are not thinking straight." He looked down at me then, and for the first time, I saw the monster hiding behind his charming smile. He kicked my hand away. "Shut up, Clara," he hissed, his face twisted in ugliness. "You have to save me. Do not be selfish." Selfish? A memory flashed through my mind, sharp and blinding. Just 2 hours ago, the bedroom of our apartment, the soft hum of the air conditioner, Mark standing behind me, fastening a string of pearls around my neck. The pearls were cool against my skin. He had kissed my shoulder, his reflection smiling at me in the vanity mirror. "You are the treasure of my life, Clara," he had whispered. "Wear the red dress tonight. I want to show the world how lucky I am." The pearls were still around my neck. But now they did not feel like a gift. They felt like a noose, tightening, choking the life out of me. Click, click. The sound cut through the tension like a gunshot. It was the sound of a poker chip tapping against the wooden table. Slow, rhythmic, deliberate. My gaze snapped to the far corner of the table. A man sat there, shrouded in shadow. I could not see his face clearly, but his presence filled the room, heavy and suffocating. While the other men looked like thugs, this man looked like a king sitting on a throne of bones. He stopped tapping the chip. "Let us see the cards," a voice said. It was deep, smooth like velvet, but cold as the grave. The dealer flipped Mark's cards. Mark let out a strangled sob. He fell to his knees, his hands clawing at his hair. "No, no, 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 please, one more hand, just one more." "You lost," the voice from the shadows said. Mark scrambled forward on his knees, toward the man in the corner. "Mr. Moretti, please. Take her. You agreed. She is yours. Just clear the debt. She will do anything. She is obedient." The man, Mr. Moretti, stood up. The chair scraped softly against the floor. He stepped out of the shadows and my breath hitched. He was tall, imposing. He wore a black suit that fit his broad shoulders perfectly, looking like it cost more than my entire life's earnings. His hair was black, slicked back, revealing a face that was devastatingly handsome and utterly terrifying. His eyes were dark, devoid of any warmth. He walked past Mark as if he were nothing more than a piece of trash on the sidewalk. He did not even glance at the weeping man on the floor. He walked straight to me. I wanted to run. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to get up and run, but my legs were frozen. My body felt heavy, paralyzed by the sheer aura of power radiating from him. He stopped right in front of me. I could smell him now. An intoxicating mix of expensive tobacco, sandalwood, and something sharp. Gunpowder. He looked down at me. I cowered, shrinking into the red carpet. Slowly, deliberately, he reached out. He was wearing black leather gloves. He pulled the glove off his right hand, revealing long, strong fingers. On his ring finger sat a heavy gold signet ring. He crouched down. His movements were fluid, like a panther stalking its prey. He reached out and hooked his finger under my chin, forcing me to look up at him. His thumb brushed against my cheek. His skin was rough, warm, and callous. The touch sent a shockwave through my body that I could not explain. It was terrifying, yet electric. "Please," I whispered, a single tear escaping my eye. "Please let me go." He studied my face. He looked at my tear-filled eyes, my trembling lips, the pulse jumping frantically in my throat. He did not look at me like a person. He looked at me like a collector looking at a rare, prized possession. His lips curled into a faint, cruel smile. "Mark," he said, his voice low, vibrating through my chest. "Get out." Mark sobbed with relief. "Thank you, Don Moretti, thank you." Mark scrambled to his feet and ran for the door, not looking back once, not once. I watched him go, my heart shattering into a million pieces. He sold me. He actually sold me. I looked back at the man in front of me, Lorenzo Moretti, the Mafia boss, the devil himself. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely audible. "Why did you accept the bet?" He tilted his head slightly. His thumb traced the line of my jaw, possessive and firm. "I did not accept the bet because of the money, Clara," he said softly. My eyes widened. He knew my name. He leaned in closer, his breath ghosting over my ear. "I have been waiting for you to walk through that door all night." The realization hit me like a physical blow. This was not an accident. This was not just bad luck. This was a trap, and I had walked right into it. He stood up, towering over me once again. The connection was broken, but the heat of his touch lingered on my skin. "Wrap her up," he commanded, his tone bored, as if ordering dinner. Before I could scream, a heavy black coat was thrown over my head. Darkness swallowed me whole. Strong arms lifted me off the ground, tossing me over a shoulder like a sack of potatoes. I kicked and thrashed, but it was useless. The last thing I heard was the sound of my own muffled scream and the distant, fading sound of a casino slot machine ringing out a jackpot. That is how I lost my freedom. In a single hand of poker. Can you imagine that feeling? The person you loved most in the world trading your life for a stack of plastic chips. If you were me, what would you have done in that moment? Would you have screamed until your throat bled, or would you have gone silent, saving your energy for a chance to escape? Where are you hearing my story from? Are you safe in your room in New York, London, or perhaps Toronto? Please do me a favor. Comment your city and country below. I need to know that there are real people witnessing this nightmare with me. And please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Because this black car is rolling, and the journey to hell has only just begun. Bam! The heavy door of the car slammed shut, sealing me inside. The noise was final, like the lid of a coffin closing. Instantly, the chaotic sounds of the casino, the ringing slot machines, the desperate shouts, the music were cut off. Silence, absolute terrifying silence. The interior of the Rolls-Royce Phantom was a different world. It smelled of cold air conditioning and rich, supple leather. It was spacious, yet I had never felt more claustrophobic in my life. I scrambled across the back seat, my fingernails clawing at the door handle. I yanked it. Locked. I pounded my fist against the tinted glass, watching the neon lights of the Las Vegas Strip blur past. "Let me out!" I screamed, my voice cracking. The car did not even slow down. In the driver's seat sat a mountain of a man. His neck was as thick as a tree trunk, and his eyes, visible in the rearview mirror, were dead. This was Marco. He drove with a terrifying calmness, weaving through traffic as if the woman screaming in the back did not exist. "You are wasting your energy." The voice came from beside me. I spun around, pressing my back against the locked door. Lorenzo Moretti was sitting there, legs crossed, looking completely at ease. He held a crystal decanter in one hand and a glass in the other. The amber liquid swirled as he poured it, the sound of the drink hitting the glass echoing in the quiet cabin. He held the glass out to me. "Drink," he said. His voice was not a request, it was a velvet-wrapped command. I stared at him, my chest heaving. "You are insane. You cannot just kidnap people. I am going to the police. I am going to tell them everything Mark did and everything you are doing." Lorenzo sighed, a sound of pure boredom. He placed the glass in a holder and reached for a leather folder on the seat next to him. He tossed it onto my lap. "Read it." My hands shook as I opened the folder. Inside were papers, loan agreements, gambling debts, page after page of Mark's failures. And then, on the last page, a collateral agreement. "I, Mark Evans, pledge my assets to cover the sum of $5 million. And below his signature there was another one, Clara Mitchell. My breath hitched. "That is not my signature," I whispered. "I never signed this." Lorenzo took a sip of his wine, watching me over the rim of the glass. "It does not matter. In the eyes of the law, it is a forgery. But in my world, a signature is a promise. Mark promised me you. And now you are mine until the debt is paid." He leaned forward, the scent of sandalwood and danger filling my personal space. "So here's your choice, Clara. You can drink this wine to calm your nerves, or I can use a rag soaked in chloroform. Which one do you think will give you a better night's sleep?" I looked at the wine. Then I looked at his eyes. They were blue, icy, and devoid of mercy. He was not bluffing. I reached out with trembling fingers and took the glass. The wine was bitter on my tongue, but it burned going down, dulling the sharp edge of my panic. Suddenly, music filled the car. It was not the radio. It was a high-quality sound system surrounding us. A violin began to play. A solo. The notes were melancholic, fast, and incredibly difficult. I froze. I knew this piece. I knew this recording. "This is Bruch. Violin Concerto No. 1, I stammered. Lorenzo hummed, closing his eyes for a second as if savoring the melody. "Beautiful, is it not? Especially the second movement. You played this at your graduation recital last year." My blood turned to ice. How did he know that? That was a small conservatory recital in New York. There were no cameras allowed. He opened his eyes and looked at me. A slow, predatory smile spread across his lips. "You rushed the tempo in the adagio," he said softly. "And you missed the fourth note in the final cadenza. A B flat. You played a B natural." I stopped breathing. The glass slipped from my hand, spilling red wine onto the beige leather seat. He did not just know who I was, he had been there. He had been watching me, not just tonight, but for a long time. "Who are you?" I whispered, true fear finally setting in. "You are not just a loan shark, you are a stalker." Lorenzo laughed. It was a dark, rich sound that made the hair on my arms stand up. "I am a patron of the arts, Clara, and I hate to see talent wasted on a man like Mark." The car began to slow down. I looked out the window. We had left the bright lights of the Strip behind. We were climbing a hill, approaching a massive iron gate. Wrought into the metal were two roaring lions. The car stopped. "Welcome home, pet," Lorenzo murmured. "Creak!" The iron gates groaned as they swung open. The Rolls-Royce crunched over a gravel driveway, winding up toward a house that looked more like a fortress. It was a sprawling estate of stone and glass, overlooking the glittering city of Las Vegas like a predator watching a herd. Marco opened the door. He did not speak. He just gripped my arm with a hand the size of a shovel and hauled me out. The desert air was cold at night. I shivered, hugging my arms around myself. Lorenzo walked ahead, his coat billowing behind him. He did not look back to see if I was following. He knew I had nowhere to go. Inside, the mansion was a museum of cold luxury, marble floors, towering pillars, statues that looked like they were screaming silently. A woman was waiting in the foyer. She was in her 50s, wearing a severe black dress that buttoned all the way to her chin. Her gray hair was pulled back so tight it pulled at her skin. Her face was a mask of stone. "This is Mrs. Bianchi," Lorenzo said, tossing his jacket onto a chair. "Get her cleaned up. She smells like cheap cologne and regret." Mrs. Bianchi looked at me. Her eyes were dark beads of judgment. There was no kindness in them, only a mix of pity and disgust. "Come with me," she said. Her voice was dry as dust. She led me up a grand staircase to a room at the end of the hall. She opened the door and shoved me inside. It was beautiful. A 4-poster bed draped in silk. A vanity table filled with perfumes. But my eyes went straight to the window. I ran to it, pushing against the glass. It did not budge. It was reinforced, bulletproof. I was in a birdcage, a very expensive golden birdcage. "Strip," Mrs. Bianchi ordered. "What? No." She did not argue. She marched over and grabbed the back of my dress. Rip. The sound of fabric tearing filled the room. "The master does not like used goods," she said, dragging me toward the bathroom. "We need to wash the scent of that other man off you." The next hour was hell. She scrubbed me. She used a rough sponge and hot water, scrubbing until my skin was raw and red. I cried, trying to cover myself, but she was strong. She washed my hair, my back, my legs, muttering about how I was too skinny, too pale, too fragile. When she finally left, throwing a silk robe at me, I felt stripped of more than just my clothes. I felt stripped of my dignity. I sat on the edge of the bed, shaking. I needed a weapon. I needed something. I began to tear the room apart. I opened the wardrobe. It was filled with clothes, dresses, coats, nightgowns. I pulled out a green silk dress. I checked the tag. Size 2. My size. Exactly my size. He had prepared this. He had been planning this kidnapping for weeks, maybe months. The realization made me nauseous. I went to the desk in the corner. I pulled open the drawers. Paper, pens. And there, in the back, a silver letter opener. It was sharp, like a dagger. I grabbed it, my hand sweating around the metal handle. The door handle turned. I gasped and hid the letter opener behind the folds of my robe. Lorenzo walked in. He had changed. He was wearing a black silk shirt, unbuttoned at the top, and loose trousers. He looked relaxed. Too relaxed. He did not knock. He did not ask permission. He just walked in as if he owned the room. And me. He walked toward me. The smell of sandalwood hit me again, triggering a panic response in my brain. "Did you enjoy your bath?" he asked, stopping inches from me. "Stay back," I warned, my voice trembling. He smirked. "Or what?" I pulled the letter opener out. I held it up, pointing the shaking tip at his chest. "I swear to God, I will hurt you. Let me go." Lorenzo did not flinch. He did not even blink. He looked at the sharp blade, then up at my eyes. "You are holding it wrong," he said calmly. He reached out. I tried to stab him, but he was too fast. His hand clamped around my wrist, stopping the blade millimeters from his shirt. He did not twist my arm. He did not hurt me. Instead, he pulled my hand toward him. He pressed the tip of the letter opener against his own throat, right over the pulse point. I gasped, trying to pull back, but his grip was iron. "Press harder, Clara," he whispered. "Go on. One push and I bleed out right here on this expensive rug." I cannot," I stammered. "If you kill me," he continued, his eyes burning into mine, "Marco and the guards downstairs will tear Mark apart. They will cut him into 100 pieces and mail them to his mother. So tell me, do you want to save your fiancé? Or do you want to kill me?" My hand shook violently. I could feel the steady beat of his heart through the metal blade. He was testing me. He was handing me his life, knowing I was too weak to take it. I let out a sob and opened my fingers. Clatter. The letter opener fell to the floor. Lorenzo smiled. It was not a nice smile. "Good girl," he murmured. He leaned down, his lips brushing my ear. "From this moment on, your life, your body, and even your hatred, they all belong to me." He turned and walked out, leaving the door unlocked. He knew he did not need to lock it. I had nowhere to run. Sunlight hit my face, sharp and blinding. I woke up with a gasp, my heart pounding. For a second, I thought I was back in my apartment. Then I saw the silk canopy above me. Then came the sound. Bang, bang, bang. Gunshots, coming from the garden. I scrambled out of bed. My body ached from the rough scrubbing the night before. I found the green dress I had seen in the closet and pulled it on. It fit perfectly, hugging my waist and hips. I hated it. I walked downstairs, following the smell of coffee. Lorenzo was sitting at a long mahogany dining table on the patio. He was reading a newspaper, a cup of espresso in front of him. He looked like a normal, wealthy businessman, except for the gun sitting on the table next to his toast. "Sit," he said without looking up. I sat at the far end of the table. A maid placed a plate of fruit in front of me. I pushed it away. "I want to go home," I said. Lorenzo folded his newspaper. He picked up a piece of paper and slid it down the long table toward me. "This is a contract," he said. I picked it up. The words swam before my eyes. "Fiancé agreement." "I need a wife, Clara," he said, taking a sip of coffee. "Well, a fake one. The other families in the city are getting restless. They think I am weak because I have no heir, no stability. You are going to play the role of my loving fiancé for 6 months. And if I refuse?" I asked. He pointed a finger toward the city skyline in the distance. "Then Mark dies. Today." I stared at him. I hated Mark. I hated him for selling me. But did I want him dead? Did I want his blood on my hands? No, I was not a killer. "What are the terms?" I asked, my voice hollow. "You will live here. You will attend events with me. You will smile. You will pretend you adore me. And—" he paused, his eyes darkening. "You will sleep in my bed." I stood up, knocking my chair over. "No, I am not sleeping with you." He raised a hand. "Relax." I said, "Sleep. I do not touch what is not willingly given. You will sleep in my bed to keep up appearances for the staff. But if you try to run, or if you betray me, Mark pays the price. Do we have a deal?" I looked at the contract, then at the gun. "Deal," I whispered. "Good," he said. "Rocco!" A man stepped out from the shadows of the garden. He was shorter than Marco, but wider. His face was a map of scars, one running right through his lip. "Teach her how to shoot," Lorenzo ordered. Rocco grunted. He looked at me with open contempt. He grabbed my arm and dragged me down the steps to a private shooting range set up on the lawn. "Hold this," Rocco barked, shoving a heavy black pistol into my hand. It was heavy, cold, it smelled of oil, my hands trembled. "What is the matter, princess?" Rocco sneered. "Those hands only good for playing the violin? Out here, if your hand does not hold a gun, it holds a grave cloth." The insult sparked something in me. Anger. Pure, hot anger. Not at Rocco, but at Mark. At Lorenzo. At myself for being so weak. I gripped the gun, I lifted it. It felt awkward, foreign. "Aim at the target!" Rocco yelled. I squeezed the trigger. Bang! The recoil jerked my arm back, hurting my shoulder. The bullet hit the dirt 10 feet in front of the target. Rocco laughed, pathetic. I gritted my teeth. I adjusted my grip. I stared at the paper silhouette of a man at the end of the range. I imagined it was Mark. I fired again. Bang, closer. Again, bang, again, bang. My ears rang. My shoulder throbbed, but I did not stop. I fired until the clip was empty. Click, click. I lowered the gun. I was breathing hard. My hands were steady now. I looked up toward the patio. Lorenzo was standing on the balcony, leaning against the railing. He was watching me. He wasn't smiling. He was nodding, a look of intense satisfaction on his face. He thinks I am a sheep? He is wrong. To survive in a den of wolves, I have to learn how to bare my teeth. This gun, it is my ticket to freedom or someone's death sentence. "Do you think I, Clara, will actually pull the trigger when the time comes?" Leave a like if you support this change in me, and hit subscribe right now. You do not want to miss the bloodbath coming next, where I officially make my debut in the underworld. 1 week. 7 days had passed since I arrived at the estate. 7 days of walking on eggshells. 7 days of learning how to breathe without making a sound. The bruising on my wrist where Marco had dragged me was starting to fade into a sickly yellow, but the bruising on my soul felt fresh and raw. Tonight was the test, the gala, the debut. I stood before the floor-to-ceiling mirror in my bedroom, my breath hitching in my throat. The woman staring back at me was a stranger. She was not Clara, the struggling musician who counted pennies for subway fare. She was a creature of the night wrapped in danger. The dress Lorenzo had sent up was a masterpiece of sin. It was crimson silk, the exact shade of oxygenated blood. It hugged my body like a second skin, strapless, exposing the curve of my neck and shoulders. The slit on the left side ran dangerously high all the way to my hip bone, promising a scandal with every step I took. My hands trembled as I fastened the diamond necklace he had provided. The stones were heavy, cold against my warm skin. They felt like a collar, a very expensive, glittering collar that screamed to the world, she belongs to someone. The heavy oak door creaked open. I did not turn around. I watched him in the mirror. Lorenzo entered. He had traded his usual black suit for a white tuxedo jacket with black lapels. The contrast made his hair look darker, his eyes deeper. He looked like a fallen angel, beautiful, pristine, and utterly lethal. He stopped in the middle of the room. The air seemed to leave the space, sucked into the gravity of his presence. His eyes traveled up my legs, over my hips, lingering on the exposed skin of my neck. It was a physical weight, that look. It felt like a caress and a warning all at once. You look. He paused, his voice dropping an octave, rough around the edges. Dangerous, Clara. He stepped closer, the scent of expensive tobacco and sandalwood enveloping me. He stood behind me, his dark eyes meeting mine in the glass. He placed his large, warm hands on my bare shoulders. I shivered. Perfect, he murmured, his thumbs brushing my collarbone. Remember the rules I taught you. Tonight, you are not a victim. You are the future queen of this city. You smile, you hold your head high, and if anyone makes you feel unsafe, you touch this necklace. I remember, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the thumping of my heart. Good. He leaned down, his lips ghosting over the sensitive skin behind my ear. Let us go show them what I bought. The ride to the Moretti Grand Hotel was silent, but the air inside the limousine crackled with tension. When we arrived, the flashing lights of cameras blinded me. The ballroom was a cavern of gold and crystal, a sea of black ties and designer gowns. The smell of expensive perfume mixed with the scent of champagne and ambition. As we walked through the double doors, the hum of conversation died instantly. Silence. Hundreds of eyes swiveled toward us. I felt stripped naked. They were calculating, judging, weighing my worth. I tightened my grip on Lorenzo's arm. His muscles were rock hard beneath the white jacket. Don Moretti! A man blocked our path. He was short, rotund, with sweat beading on his greasy forehead. His tuxedo was ill-fitting, straining against his stomach, but it was his eyes that made my skin crawl. They were wet, predatory eyes that undressed me in a second. Don Salvatore, the rival, the pig. I see the rumors are true, Salvatore said, his voice like oil sliding over gravel. He licked his lips, his gaze fixated on the slit of my dress. Who is this delight? You always have the best taste in livestock, Lorenzo. Livestock. He called me livestock. Salvatore reached out, his chubby, ring-clad fingers aiming for my hand. I flinched. Before he could touch me, Lorenzo moved. It was a subtle shift, but the temperature in the room seemed to plummet below freezing. He stepped between us, using his height to tower over the smaller man. This is my fiancée, Clara, Lorenzo said. His voice was terrifyingly calm, but I could hear the violence simmering beneath the surface. She is not livestock, Salvatore. She is the future Mrs. Moretti. Salvatore chuckled nervously, but he did not back down. Fiancé? Since when do you marry, Lorenzo? Lorenzo took a step forward, invading Salvatore's personal space. Listen closely, Lorenzo whispered, loud enough for the nearby circle to hear. If you touch her, if you even look at her with disrespect again, you are declaring war on the Moretti family. Do you want war tonight, Salvatore? Because I am dressed for a funeral. Salvatore recoiled as if slapped. His face turned pale. Just a joke, Lorenzo. No need for threats. It was not a threat, Lorenzo said, guiding me away. It was a promise. My heart was hammering against my ribs so hard I thought it would bruise. He had protected me. He had threatened a mob boss for me. The realization was a heady mix of terror and intoxication. I need a drink, I managed to say, my legs feeling like jelly. Stay here, Lorenzo commanded, placing me near a marble pillar away from the crowd. I will get it. Do not move. Do not talk to anyone. He disappeared into the sea of black suits. I leaned against the pillar, trying to catch my breath. So you are the new flavor of the month. I turned. Standing there was a woman who looked like she had walked out of a fashion magazine. Tall, blonde, with a face carved from ice. She wore a silver dress that shimmered like mercury. Elena, Lorenzo's ex-lover. I had seen her photo in the files at the house. Excuse me? I said, straightening my spine. Do not play dumb with me, honey, she hissed, her blue eyes full of venom. She swirled a glass of red wine in her hand. You think you are special? You are just a debt payment, a whore with a violin case. Once he is bored with you, he will toss you aside like he did with the others. Her words stung. They stung because they were my own fears spoken aloud. At least I am worth $5 million, I shot back, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. How much were you worth, Elena? Her eyes widened in rage. You little bitch! She tilted her hand. It happened in slow motion. The dark red liquid arced through the air. I tried to step back, but I was too slow. The wine splashed across the front of my crimson dress, darkening the silk to a blackish red. It looked like a gunshot wound. It looked like blood. Oops, Elena smirked, feigning shock. Clumsy me. Oh dear, that dress looks ruined. Just like your reputation. The old Clara, the girl who cried when she dropped her sheet music, would have run away. She would have locked herself in a bathroom stall and sobbed until her eyes were puffy. But I was not that girl. Not anymore. I had spent a week in the desert sun with Rocco, firing a gun until my hands bled. I had learned that in this world, tears were blood in the water for sharks. I stepped forward. The smirk fell from Elena's face. Smack. The sound of my palm connecting with her cheek was sharp and loud, echoing over the polite chatter of the party. Her head snapped to the side. The crowd gasped. You are right, I said, my voice steady, though my hand stung like fire. I am clumsy too. I turned on my heel, leaving her stunned, holding her cheek. I walked toward the ladies' room with my head held high, my heart pounding a rhythm of war. I was scrubbing the wine stain in the empty restroom, my hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading, when it happened. The lights flickered, once, twice, then total darkness. The music stopped. For a second there was silence, then chaos. Screams erupted from the ballroom, glass shattered, and then the unmistakable sound of gunfire. Pop, pop, pop. Panic seized me. I dropped the wet towel. Lorenzo. I had to find Lorenzo. I pushed open the door, stumbling into the pitch-black hallway. I could smell smoke. I could hear running footsteps. Suddenly, a hand shot out of the darkness and grabbed my arm. Fingers dug into my flesh, bruisingly hard. Lorenzo? I gasped, reaching out. No. A voice hissed in my ear. A voice I knew. A voice that used to whisper, I love you. Now it sounded manic, broken. Not him. The emergency lights flashed red, bathing the hallway in a hellish glow. Mark. My stomach dropped. He looked like a corpse that had clawed its way out of the grave. His eyes were sunken, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them. His clothes were torn and dirty. He smelled of sweat and desperation. And in his hand, pressing against my throat, was a serrated hunting knife. You, I choked out, tears of shock springing to my eyes. Come with me, he screamed, dragging me backward toward the lobby. You bitch! You ruined everything! If I cannot have you, that bastard cannot either. I will trade you back. I will get my money back. Mark, stop. You are insane. I clawed at his hand, but he was fueled by adrenaline. Shut up! He pressed the knife harder. I felt a sharp sting as the blade broke the skin of my neck. A warm trickle of blood slid down my collarbone. He dragged me out into the main lobby. The room was chaos, people screaming and running for the exits. But as Mark dragged me into the center, a circle cleared around us. Let her go. The voice cut through the noise like a blade. Lorenzo emerged from the smoke. He looked like a god of war. He held a golden desert eagle in his hand, steady as a rock. His white tuxedo jacket was splattered with red, blood that was not his own. His face was a mask of cold fury. Stay back! Mark shrieked, his voice cracking. He pulled me tighter against his chest, using me as a human shield. The knife dug deeper into my throat. I will kill her, I swear to God, Moretti, I will slit her throat right here. Lorenzo did not yell. He did not bargain. He did not take a step closer. He simply raised his gun. Time seemed to stop. I could hear Mark's heart pounding against my back. I could see the smoke swirling in the red emergency lights. A tiny red laser dot appeared. It danced for a fraction of a second, then settled right in the center of Mark's forehead. Lorenzo smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of death itself greeting an old friend. Let her go, Lorenzo whispered, his voice carrying across the silent room, or I will blow your hand off first. Mark hesitated. I felt his grip loosen slightly. You are bluffing. You will hit her. I never miss, Lorenzo said. And then he pulled the trigger. Bang! My ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out the scream tearing from my own throat. The force of the bullet was terrifying. It didn't hit Mark's head. It hit the hand holding the knife. Mark screamed, a sound of pure animalistic agony, as his hand exploded in a mist of red. The knife clattered to the floor. The impact threw him backward. I fell to my knees, gasping for air, clutching my bleeding neck. Lorenzo was moving before Mark even hit the ground. He sprinted toward me, sliding on the marble floor, disregarding the blood and the glass. Clara! He reached for me, his eyes wide with panic. I had never seen him panic. But just as his fingers brushed my arm, another sound cut through the chaos. A soft, suppressed sound. Pfft. Lorenzo jerked violently. It was as if an invisible hammer had struck him in the chest. A blossom of bright crimson appeared on his pristine white shirt, right above his ribs. He grunted, stumbling back a step, but he did not fall. Sniper! Rocco roared from somewhere in the smoke. Upper balcony! Get them out! Now! Lorenzo did not look at his wound. He looked at me. He grabbed me with his good arm, hauling me to my feet. Run, he commanded through gritted teeth. Do not look back. Run! We ran. We ran through the kitchen, slipping on spilled food, down a narrow service corridor, and burst out into the cool night air of the alleyway. An armored black SUV was waiting, engine roaring. Marco threw the door open. Lorenzo shoved me inside and collapsed onto the back seat next to me. Drive, he yelled. Go to the safe house. Do not stop for anything, not for police, not for red lights. The car roared to life, tires screeching as we sped away into the night. I turned to Lorenzo. Lorenzo, I cried, my hands hovering over him, terrified to touch him. You are shot. Oh my God, you are shot. He was pale, deadly pale. Beads of sweat were forming on his forehead. He was pressing his hand against his side, but the blood was seeping through his fingers, dark and thick, staining the cream leather seats. Cream. It is fine, he gritted out, his eyes squeezed shut in pain. Just a scratch. That is not a scratch, I yelled, hysteria rising in my throat. Marco, where is the doctor? Dr. Lee is meeting us at the Canyon House, Marco said, his voice tight. He was driving like a madman. Apply pressure, Miss Clara. Do not let him bleed out. Apply pressure. I looked around frantically for a bandage, a towel, anything. There was nothing. Desperate, I grabbed the hem of my red silk dress. The dress he had bought for me. The dress that was supposed to make me a queen. Now, it would be a bandage. Rip! I tore a long strip from the skirt, the sound of tearing silk loud in the quiet car. Then another. I wadded up the expensive fabric into a ball. This is going to hurt, I sobbed. I pressed the silk ball hard against the hole in his chest. Lorenzo groaned, a low, guttural sound that tore at my heart. His body arched off the seat, his muscles seizing. I am sorry, I wept, tears blurring my vision, mixing with the blood on my hands. I am sorry, I am sorry. His hand, sticky and warm with blood, reached up. He cupped my face, smearing red across my cheek. He pulled me down until our foreheads touched. His skin was clammy. Don't look at him, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. What? I sniffled. Mark, he rasped. Don't think about him. Don't think about what you saw. Look at me, Clara. Look at me. Only me. I stared into his eyes. They were glazing over, fighting to stay focused. Even dying, he was demanding my attention. Even dying, he was trying to erase Mark from my mind. I am looking at you, I whispered back. I am only looking at you. Are you crying? He coughed, a speck of blood appearing on his lips. Because you are scared? Or because you are worried about me? I opened my mouth to lie, to say I was scared of the guns, the blood, the Mafia. But the lie died in my throat. I was terrified. But not for myself. I was terrified that the light in his eyes would go out. The monster who had bought me. The monster who had just taken a bullet for me. I pressed harder on the wound. That was my answer. The safe house was nestled deep in a canyon, invisible from the main road. Dr. Lee was waiting on the porch as the car screeched to a halt. He was a slender Asian man with wire-rimmed glasses and hands as steady as a surgeon's, which I learned later he was. They took Lorenzo into a sterile room in the basement. I tried to follow, but Rocco held me back. You cannot go in there, Miss Clara, Rocco said, his voice unusually soft. You are covered in blood. Let the doctor work. I was left alone in the hallway. I looked down at myself. My red dress was ruined, torn and stained darker with his blood. My hands were red. My neck was stinging where Mark had cut me. I slid down the wall and hugged my knees. I shivered, though the house was warm. Hours passed. Or maybe minutes. Time lost its meaning. Every second stretched into an eternity. Finally, Dr. Lee came out. He was wiping his hands on a towel. I scrambled to my feet. Is he? He is stable, Dr. Lee said calmly. The bullet missed the lung by a fraction of an inch. But he has lost a lot of blood. The infection risk is high. The fever will come soon. He is asking for you. Asking for... I rushed into the room. Lorenzo was lying on a white hospital bed. His chest was wrapped in thick bandages. He was burning up. I could feel the heat radiating from him before I even touched him. He was tossing and turning, caught in the grip of a delirium. I sat on the chair beside him and took his hand. It was large, calloused, and engulfed mine completely. No, he mumbled, his brow furrowed in distress. Don't take her. She plays the violin. My heart stopped. Lorenzo, I whispered, I am here. His grip tightened on my hand, painful and desperate. His eyes flew open, but they were unseeing, lost in a fever dream. Clara, he moaned. He didn't call me pet. He didn't call me little bird or collateral. He called me by my name. Clara, don't go. Don't leave me in the dark. It is so cold here. Tears streamed down my face. This powerful, terrifying man was scared of the dark? Scared of being alone? I squeezed his hand back, leaning down to kiss his feverish forehead. I am here, I promised, and realized with a jolt that I meant it. I could have run. I could have stolen a car and left while he was unconscious. But I was glued to this chair. I'm not going anywhere, Lorenzo, I promise. 2 days later, the fever broke just before dawn. Lorenzo woke up weak, but his recovery speed was terrifying. His resilience was inhuman. The atmosphere in the safe house had shifted. It was quiet, secluded, a world away from the neon chaos of Las Vegas. The danger felt distant, replaced by a strange, heavy intimacy. We were alone here, save for a few guards patrolling the perimeter. It felt domestic, twisted but domestic. Come with me, Lorenzo said that evening. He was wearing a loose silk robe, walking slowly but steadily, his hand pressing lightly against his bandaged side. You should be in bed, I argued, walking close beside him, my hands hovering ready to catch him if he fell. I have rested enough, he said, his voice raspy. There is something I need to hear. My soul is itching. He led me down a long corridor to a heavy oak door at the back of the house. He unlocked it with a thumbprint scanner. The door swung open and I gasped. It was a sanctuary. The room was perfectly soundproofed, the walls lined with crushed velvet to dampen the echo, and everywhere there were instruments, cellos, violins, violas. Some looked hundreds of years old, resting in glass cases like sleeping beauties. It was a museum of music. In the center of the room, on a solitary velvet stand, rested a violin. I stepped closer, my breath catching. It was exquisite. The wood was a dark honey color, the varnish glowing under the soft track lighting. The craftsmanship was undeniable. A Guarneri, I breathed, my fingers itching to touch it. Jesus, Lorenzo, this is worth millions. Where did you get this? Pick it up, Lorenzo commanded softly. He sat in a leather armchair in the corner, wincing slightly as he settled his wounded body. I picked up the instrument and the bow. It felt lighter than I expected, perfectly balanced. It felt alive in my hands, humming with potential energy. What do you want me to play? I asked, turning to face him. Lorenzo looked at me from the shadows. His eyes were intense, burning with a fire that had nothing to do with fever and everything to do with memory. Play the piece you played on the corner of 52nd Street, he said. 3 years ago, November, it was raining. I almost dropped the bow. I stared at him, my mouth slightly open. How do you know that? 3 years ago, before Mark, before the debt, before my life fell apart. I had just lost my scholarship to Juilliard. I was broke, heartbroken, standing in the freezing rain in New York City, playing simply because I had nothing else left to do. I was playing for the ghosts of my dreams. I was there, Lorenzo said softly. My car was stopped at the light. I rolled down the window. I heard you. He leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, his gaze locking onto mine. I watched you for 20 minutes, Clara. You were soaking wet. Your hair was plastered to your face. You looked like you wanted to die. But the music, he shook his head slowly. It was the most defiant, beautiful thing I had ever heard. It was not sad. It was angry. It was alive. I told myself then, one day I would find the girl who played the rain. My heart hammered against my ribs, not out of fear, but out of a sudden, overwhelming realization. He hadn't bought me on a whim in that casino. I wasn't just a random debt payment. I was his obsession. He had been waiting for 3 years. Play, he whispered. Play for me. I lifted the violin to my chin. The wood felt warm against my skin. I closed my eyes. I remembered the cold rain of New York. I remembered the pain of rejection. And I played. The music filled the room, mournful and sharp. It was a sonata of loneliness. I poured everything into it. The fear of the casino, the betrayal of Mark, the confusion of the last week, and the strange, terrifying pull I felt toward this man. The Guarneri sang, it cried, it screamed. As I reached the crescendo, the music swelling to a fever pitch, I felt a presence behind me, heat radiating against my back. Lorenzo. He didn't stop me. He wrapped his good arm around my waist, pulling me back against his solid chest. He buried his face in the crook of my neck, inhaling deeply. He stood there, holding me while I played, his breath hot on my skin. The vibration of the violin resonated through my body, into my bones, and into his. We were connected by the melody, two broken souls fusing together in the dark. The song ended on a low, trembling note that hung in the air like smoke. I lowered the bow, breathing hard, sweat trickling down my spine. Lorenzo kissed the sensitive spot right below my ear. It sent a shiver down my spine that curled my toes. You belong to me, Clara, he whispered against my skin, his voice rough with emotion. Not because I bought you, not because of a contract, but because you play the song of my soul. I turned in his arms. I looked up at him, the monster, the savior, the man who had watched me in the rain. I raised my hand to touch his face. Lorenzo. Bang. The heavy oak door to the sanctuary burst open, slamming against the wall. We sprang apart, the spell shattering instantly. Standing there was an old man with silver hair and a face sharp as a hawk. He wore a gray suit and carried a cane that looked like a weapon. Vittorio, the consigliere, the advisor. He marched into the room, followed by 2 armed guards. He did not look at the priceless violins. He did not look at his injured Don. He looked at me with pure, unadulterated hatred. Vittorio, Lorenzo growled, his body tense, stepping in front of me to shield me. You interrupt me? In my private sanctuary? I interrupt a suicide mission, Vittorio spat. He threw a stack of photographs onto the small table beside the armchair. They scattered across the floor like dead leaves. What is this? Lorenzo asked, his voice dangerous. Evidence, Vittorio said. We traced the signal that disabled the security system at the gala, the signal that let the assassins in, the signal that almost got you killed. Vittorio pointed a gnarled finger at me. It came from inside the house, from a specific phone. He paused for effect. Hers. Lorenzo went still. The air in the room turned to ice. Explain. She is a spy, Lorenzo, Vittorio accused, his voice rising. She is working for Salvatore. She sent the message. She is the snake in your bed. She is the reason you have a hole in your chest. I stared at the photos on the floor, screenshots of text messages. The timestamp matched the blackout, the number. It was my phone number. No, I whispered, shaking my head violently. No, I didn't. Lorenzo, I swear. Lorenzo bent down slowly, wincing, and picked up a photo. He looked at it, then he looked at me. The warmth, the intimacy, the connection from moments ago. It evaporated. His eyes, which had been full of adoration, turned black. The walls went back up, higher and thicker than before. Lorenzo, please, I cried, reaching for him. It is a setup, Elena. She took my phone. Lock her in the cellar, Lorenzo ordered. His voice was dead. He turned his back to me. Lorenzo! I screamed as the guards grabbed my arms. He did not turn around. The heavy oak door slammed shut behind the guards, leaving only a ringing silence in its wake. The sanctuary, moments ago filled with the music of my soul and the heat of Lorenzo's body, now felt like a tomb. The warmth was gone. The tenderness was gone. Lorenzo stood 5 feet away from me. He was no longer the man who had held me while I played the violin. He was the dawn. He was the monster the world feared. His face was a mask of stone, his eyes devoid of any light. He held the stack of photographs in his hand. Lorenzo, I whispered, my voice trembling. Please, look at me. He did not look at me. He looked at the photo of the text message. The gate code is 7734. The target is in the ballroom. The timestamp matches, he said, his voice terrifyingly quiet. The number matches. The GPS location matches. He finally looked up. The hatred in his eyes hit me like a physical blow. I let you in, he said, his voice rough. I let you see the parts of me that no one sees. And you sold me out to Salvatore. For what? Did he offer you more money? Or was this the plan all along? Did Mark send you to destroy me from the inside? No! I stepped forward, reaching for him. I did not send those messages. You have to believe me. He pulled a gun from his waistband, a sleek black Beretta. He leveled it at my forehead. I froze. The barrel was dark and empty, like the eye of death. Give me one reason, he growled, stepping closer until the cold metal pressed against the skin between my eyes. Give me one reason why I should not pull this trigger right now and end this. My heart hammered against my ribs, but strangely, the tears stopped. Fear, when it becomes absolute, turns into clarity. I looked past the gun. I looked straight into his tortured, furious eyes. Because I am stupid, I said clearly. Lorenzo blinked, taken aback. What? I am a violinist, Lorenzo, I said, my voice gaining strength. I know how to read sheet music. I know how to tune a string. I do not know how to bypass military-grade encryption. I do not know how to disable a security system that costs millions of dollars. You do. I took a breath, pushing my forehead slightly against the gun barrel. You know my phone has a passcode. You know I leave it in my purse. You know I was in the bathroom for 20 minutes cleaning wine off my dress. If I were a spy, would I be sloppy enough to send a text from my own number, unencrypted, while standing in your house? Lorenzo's finger twitched on the trigger. He was listening. Someone framed me, I whispered. Someone who had access to my phone. Someone who hates you. Lorenzo stared at me for a long, agonizing minute. Then he lowered the gun. He did not put it away, but he was no longer aiming at my head. You have 24 hours, he said, his voice like ice. Prove it. If you cannot prove it by this time tomorrow, I will hand you over to Vittorio, and he will not be as kind as I am. He grabbed my arm and dragged me out of the sanctuary. He did not take me to my bedroom. He took me down the spiral staircase, past the kitchen, into the wine cellar. It was cold here. It smelled of damp earth and old grapes. He shoved me inside and locked the iron gate. Lorenzo! I grabbed the bars. Please! He turned his back and walked away. I sank to the stone floor, shivering. I was alone, but I was not defeated. Think, Clara, think. The gala, the bathroom, Elena. My eyes widened. Elena had spilled wine on me. It was not an accident. It was a distraction. While I was cleaning my dress, my purse was sitting on the counter. I needed to see the security footage. I waited. It felt like hours. Finally, the door opened. It was not Lorenzo. It was Rocco. He carried a tray of food, looking uncomfortable. Rocco, I said, standing up, I need to speak to him. The boss does not want to talk to you, Rocco grunted. Then tell him I know who did it. I lied. Tell him to check the cameras outside the ladies' room at the hotel, 9:15 p.m. Tell him to watch Elena. Rocco hesitated, then nodded. He left. An hour later, the heavy door opened again. Lorenzo stood there. He looked exhausted. His shirt was unbuttoned, revealing fresh blood seeping through his bandages. He unlocked the gate. He held a tablet in his hand. He turned the screen toward me. It was grainy black and white footage. It showed the hallway outside the bathroom. It showed Elena walking out. She stopped. She pulled a phone from her clutch. My phone. It had a distinctive violin case sticker on the back. She typed something rapidly, then slipped back into the bathroom. 2 minutes later, I walked out. She swapped them, Lorenzo said, his voice hollow. She took your phone, sent the message to Salvatore, and put it back before you finished cleaning up. He dropped the tablet. He stepped into the cell. He looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw the regret swimming in his dark eyes. Clara, he rasped. He reached out. I flinched. The movement made him stop. A look of pain crossed his face. I almost killed you, he whispered. I held a gun to your head. You did, I said softly. You did what you had to do to protect your family. You are my family, he roared, the sudden volume making me jump. He grabbed my face in his hands, his thumbs stroking my cheeks frantically. Do you not understand? When I thought you betrayed me, it did not just make me angry. It broke me. It killed me. He kissed me. It was not a gentle kiss. It was desperate, apologetic, a collision of teeth and lips. I kissed him back, tasting the salt of his sweat and the iron of his guilt. Suddenly, a siren wailed. It was a low, mournful sound that echoed through the entire house. Lorenzo pulled back, his head snapping up. Perimeter breach. What? We are found, he said, his face hardening into the mask of the dawn. Salvatore. He tracked us here. He did not just want to frame you. He wanted to flush us out. An explosion shook the ground above us. Dust rained down from the cellar ceiling. Come on! Lorenzo grabbed my hand. The house is compromised. We have to go. Where? I cried as we ran toward a hidden door behind a wine rack. Hell, he grimaced as another explosion rocked the foundation. We are going to hell. The world was fire and noise. We sprinted through a narrow underground tunnel, the air thick with dust. Above us, I could hear the muffled sounds of gunfire and heavy boots. The sanctuary, the beautiful violins, the safe house, it was all burning. We burst out into the cool desert night, a mile away from the main house. The sky was lit up with orange flames. My heart twisted. My car is stashed here, Lorenzo said, limping heavily. He was leaning on me now. His wound had reopened. I could feel the warm, sticky blood soaking through his shirt and onto my shoulder. We reached an old, dusty pickup truck hidden under a camouflage tarp. It was a far cry from the Rolls-Royce, but it was our only hope. You drive, Lorenzo gasped, tossing me the keys. He slumped against the passenger door, his face gray. I have never driven a truck, I stammered. Learn, he wheezed. Fast! I climbed into the driver's seat. I turned the key. The engine roared to life. I slammed my foot on the gas and we tore off into the desert, leaving the burning wreckage of his empire behind. We drove for hours. The city lights of Las Vegas faded into the distance, replaced by the endless, empty dark of the Nevada desert. Lorenzo was fading. He was muttering in Italian, his head lolling against the window. "Stay with me," I commanded, my voice shaking. "Lorenzo, do not you dare close your eyes." "You drive well, for a musician," he mumbled, a faint smile playing on his lips. We reached the cabin just before dawn. It was a tiny, dilapidated shack in the middle of nowhere. No electricity, no running water, just 4 walls and a roof. I practically carried him inside. He was dead weight now, a mountain of muscle and pain. I laid him on the single dusty mattress in the corner. I lit a kerosene lamp. The golden light revealed the extent of the damage. His bandages were soaked through. He was shivering violently, his teeth chattering. "Cold," he whispered. "Clara, cold." There were no blankets. I ran to the fireplace. There was some old wood. I managed to start a fire, but it wasn't enough. The desert night was freezing, and he was losing body heat from blood loss. I had to act. I had to become the thing he needed. I stripped off my ruined dress. I stripped off his bloody clothes, cleaning his wound as best as I could with the water from a canteen. Then I climbed into the narrow bed with him. I pressed my naked body against his, skin to skin. I wrapped my arms and legs around him, trying to transfer every ounce of my warmth into him. "Clara?" he breathed, his eyes fluttering open. He looked at me with a mixture of confusion and reverence. "Shh," I whispered, stroking his damp hair. "I am here. I am keeping you warm." He groaned, burying his face in my neck. His arms came around me, holding me with a strength that shouldn't have been possible. "Why?" he murmured against my skin. "I bought you. I threatened you. I put a gun to your head. Why are you saving me?" I looked at the flickering shadows on the ceiling. Why? Because somewhere between the fear and the adrenaline, the monster had shown me his heart. Because he listened to me play the violin in the rain. Because he took a bullet for me. "Because you are mine," I whispered, using his own words. "You are the devil, Lorenzo. But you are my devil." He let out a shuddering breath. He shifted, his hand moving down my back, pulling me flush against his hips. The friction sent a jolt of electricity through me. Even in this state, near death, his desire was palpable. "Clara," he groaned, "if I die tonight—" "You are not dying," I said fiercely. I kissed him. I kissed the fever from his lips. It wasn't gentle. It was acclaiming. In that dirty shack, with the wind howling outside and the smell of blood in the air, we didn't make love. We survived. We tangled together, desperate and raw, affirming that we were still alive, that we still belonged to the earth and to each other. I fell asleep to the sound of his steady heartbeat under my ear. The next morning, the sun was blinding. I woke up alone in the bed, panic surged through me. "Lorenzo?" I sat up, wrapping a moth-eaten blanket around myself. He was sitting by the window. He had found a fresh shirt from a supply bag. He was cleaning his golden Desert Eagle. He looked different. The vulnerability of the night before was gone. His jaw was set, his eyes were cold, calculating. He was the Dawn again. "Get dressed," he said without looking at me. "We leave in 10 minutes. "Leave?" I asked, hurt by his coldness. "You can barely walk." "Salvatore thinks I am dead," Lorenzo said, snapping the magazine into the gun. Click. "That is my advantage. I am going back to Vegas. I am going to burn his world to the ground." He stood up. He winced, but he hid it well. He walked over to me. He did not touch me. He just looked at me. "You will stay here," he said. "Marco will come for you when it is safe." "No," I said. He narrowed his eyes. "Excuse me?" I said no. I stood up, letting the blanket fall. I didn't care about my nakedness. I wanted him to see me. "I am not staying here. I am not a damsel in distress anymore, Lorenzo. You made sure of that. You taught me how to shoot. You taught me how to survive." I walked over to the table where he had laid out a second gun, a smaller one, a Glock. I picked it up. The metal was heavy and familiar in my hand. I turned around. I pointed the gun straight at his chest. Lorenzo froze. His eyes widened slightly. "Clara," he said slowly, his hand twitching toward his own weapon. "Put the gun down." "You said I belong to you," I said, my voice steady. "But you belong to me, too. If you go back to hell, I am coming with you." I cocked the gun, click-clack. "I am sorry, Lorenzo," I whispered. For a second, I saw fear in his eyes. He thought I was going to shoot him. He thought I was betraying him after all. I am sorry, I repeated, lowering the gun and flipping it around, offering him the handle. But I am not asking for permission. I am joining the war. Lorenzo stared at the gun in my hand. Then he looked at my face. A slow, terrifying smile spread across his lips. It was a smile of pride. He took the gun. He tucked it into the back of his waistband. Then he grabbed the back of my neck and kissed me hard. Get dressed, he growled against my mouth. Let us go hunt. Las Vegas was loud, it was bright, it was oblivious to the war that was about to consume it. We drove into the city in the stolen truck. Lorenzo was in pain. I could tell by the way his knuckles turned white on the steering wheel, but he ran on pure rage. The warehouse district, he said. Salvatore operates out of an old meatpacking plant. That is where he will be celebrating my death. We parked a block away. Lorenzo handed me the Glock. Safety off, he said. Do not hesitate. If they have a gun, they are a target. If they are unarmed, ignore them. Stay behind me. I got it, I said. I checked the chamber. I felt a strange calm. The girl who cried over a broken violin string was dead. She died in the cellar. We moved through the shadows. The warehouse was guarded by 3 men. Lorenzo took out the first 2 with his silencer. Pfft, pfft. They dropped without a sound. The third one turned. He saw us. He reached for his radio. I didn't think. I just acted. I raised my gun. I remembered Rocco's voice. Aim. Exhale. Squeeze. Bang! The guard grabbed his leg and fell screaming. Lorenzo looked at me. He nodded. Nice shot. We breached the main doors. Inside, it was a party. Champagne was flowing. Music was blaring. Salvatore was sitting on a crate in the center, laughing, holding a bottle of expensive whiskey. To Lorenzo Moretti, Salvatore shouted, raising a toast. May he rot in hell! I prefer the penthouse, Lorenzo's voice boomed. The music died. Every head turned. Lorenzo stepped into the light, blood seeping through his shirt, gun raised. I stood right beside him, my weapon trained on the crowd. Ghosts! Someone screamed. Chaos erupted. Gunfire exploded from every direction. I ducked behind a metal pillar. Bullets sparked against the steel above my head. I fired back blindly, my heart pounding in my throat. I saw Lorenzo moving like a whirlwind. He was efficient, brutal. He shot a man coming at him with a knife, then pistol-whipped another. Then I saw him, hiding behind a stack of crates, trying to sneak toward the back exit. Mark. He looked pathetic. His hand was bandaged heavily where Lorenzo had shot him. He was crawling like a rat. Rage, hot and white, flooded my vision. This man sold me. This man held a knife to my throat. This man tried to kill the man I loved. I broke cover. Mark! I screamed. He froze. He turned. When he saw me, saw the gun in my hand, the blood on my dress, the fire in my eyes, he went pale. He fumbled for a gun in his belt with his good hand. Don't, I warned. He raised it. I fired. The bullet didn't kill him. I didn't want to kill him. It punched through his shoulder, pinning him against the wooden crate. He screamed, dropping his gun. He slid down to the floor, weeping. I walked over to him. The battle was raging around me, but I didn't hear it. I only saw him. I stood over him. I pointed the gun at his head. Clara, he blubbered, snot running down his face. Clara, please, I am sorry. I love you. Remember? The pearls, the music? The pearls were a noose, I said coldly, and the music stopped a long time ago. Please, he begged. I will pay you back, I swear. The debt is paid, I said. Lorenzo paid my debt. Now I am collecting yours. I lowered the gun. I shot his knee. He shrieked, curling into a ball. That is for the poker game, I said. I shot his other knee. That is for the knife at my throat. I stood over his broken body. I could kill him. It would be easy. But death was too quick. Live with it, I whispered. Live knowing you created me. I turned away. Silence fell over the warehouse. I looked up. The guards were dead or had fled. In the center of the room, Lorenzo had Salvatore on his knees. Salvatore was crying, begging, offering money, offering territory. Lorenzo looked at me. He waited. He was letting me decide. I walked over to them. I stood beside Lorenzo. I looked down at the greasy man who had called me livestock. Do it, I said. Lorenzo didn't hesitate. Bang, it was over. The silence was deafening. The smell of gunpowder and blood was thick in the air. Lorenzo holstered his gun. He swayed slightly. He was losing strength. I rushed to him, wrapping my arms around his waist to support him. We did it, I whispered into his chest. He pulled back. He looked down at me. His face was splattered with blood. his eyes wild and exhausted. But when he looked at me, they softened. He reached into his pocket. He pulled out the heavy gold signet ring, the ring of the dawn, the ring that symbolized absolute power in his world. He took my left hand. He slid the heavy gold ring onto my thumb. It was too big for my finger. "You are not a fake fiancé anymore," he rasped, his voice rough with emotion. "You are not a debt. You are not a victim." He kissed my forehead, leaving a smear of blood on my skin. It felt like an anointing. "Welcome to hell," he smiled, and this time the smile reached his eyes. "My queen." I used to be Clara, the innocent violinist who believed in fairy tales. I was sold for a stack of chips. I was broken. I was hunted. But in the darkness, I found a monster who loved me enough to burn the world down. Now I hold the heart of the devil in one hand and a gun in the other. The melody of my life has changed keys. It is no longer a lullaby. It is a war anthem. And I love every bloody note of it. Thank you for listening to my story. If you made it this far, you are part of the family now. Don't forget to subscribe, because in this world, the story never really ends.